It's Craiggie's Connacht Rugby Podcast. First game of the season. Connacht have managed to get a win. Nice to get a win. Nice to get a 5-try bonus, but there's still things that didn't go quite so well. So here's myself and Danny on the in-match as to what happened during the game.
Okay, Danny, it's about, 5 minutes before kick-off. We've got Connacht have just come off the field to could have been a bit louder, I think, but I think that's still a bit of a hangover from the World Cup last week for people. But perfect day for a game. Pitch is gorgeous as usual. I assume you're expecting a good win for Connacht.
Yeah, I'd be expecting a victory for Connacht. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit flat at the moment. Would love Connacht to come out and score an early try, get the crowd going. Definitely a bit of a hangover. It'll be an interesting game. A lot of guys being given a chance. This new coaching ticket has come in, made a lot of changes from say the last game of last season. Guys getting a chance, so be interested to see how they go.
Yeah, who are you looking forward to most? JJ for me, you?
I can't look past Ford. I really can't wait to see how he does this season. Like just that match against Munster, he showed like he really stepped up. He's gone up a gear again.
Yeah.
And I really hope to see that comes through in the season.
Okay, we'll talk again on 20 minutes and hopefully we'll have some good news and the crowd will be in a bit better form by then. Okay, Dan, 20 minutes gone. Connacht lead 13-0. It's all looking good.
Yeah, it's looking really impressive. Connacht have come out the blocks. They eased into the game, kicking 2 penalties, and they seem to be taking their chances. That they've come away each time, apart from that last 22 entry. But they look pretty fluid. It's not absolutely perfect, but I guess it's the first game of the season, so it's never going to be perfect. But it's looking good.
It certainly is. Blady with the first try after Tom Farrell passed it to him. My 33-1 bet is now gone, but what can you do? It's 13-0. Okay, Danny, it's half-time. Connacht lead 27 points to 5. Slightly disappointing to let Ospreys in there just on the half-time break, but Caolin Blade, his third hat-trick of the year, because he scored the other 2 in January and March, which puts him into third place in the all-time try scorers for Connacht. He's passed out Kieran Marmion and Fionn Carr. He's only 2 behind Tiernan O'Halloran, so wow.
Yeah, I think he's been paying attention to Marmion, who's doing pretty well over in Bristol. I think he's not far off scoring a try per game, so he's like, I can't let him steal the spotlight. So Blade's been playing well, doing a lot of trail lines. I'd like him to speed the ball up a bit because the Ospreys don't know what to do the ruck speed's under 3 seconds. They seem completely lost when Connacht speeded up. A bit disappointed to let them in at the end, but a lot of positives from the first game of the season.
Yeah, Cathal Ford's going very well. You were interested, and I think he's been one of the star attractions.
Yeah, he made a fabulous break where the game kind of slowed down. Ball hit the ground from a poor pass, and Ford just out of nowhere just makes a break down the pitch and puts Blade away. Like, I know Blade had a little bit of work to do, but it all came from Ford making that break, just completely catching the Ospreys off.
And he's defending his accent as well. It's not just attack.
Well, I think that's right across the board. It's the whole team that are defending very well. I've been really impressed with their defence. Joe Joyce has put in some massive hits.
Yeah, that was the one I was looking for, and he's put in one hit. I don't know how that man's still alive after that hit.
Yeah, Jesus. He hit the 10 at one point very early on in the game, and he hasn't recovered. Yeah. He's all over the place. But it's not just Joyce.
No, Jack Anger's at it as well.
Yeah, massively. But they've all really put their hand up. Like, if they can keep this up for the season, we're going to go well.
Yeah, there seems to be a hard edge to Connacht this year that I haven't noticed before, and so maybe that's coming out of the quality of the coaching that they're getting for some hard lads in the coaching system. So we'll talk again on 60 minutes. Okay, Danny, we're just gone past 63 minutes. I did want to start this just before 60, but we've had 3 minutes of solid rugby there. Connacht are leading 34-19, but they're not quite the same they were in the first half, are they?
No, they've definitely taken the foot off the throat a little bit, and Ospreys we're slowly growing into the game. Now, Cathal Ford has gotten over and got the bonus point to take it just that little bit further away. But with 20 minutes left, we really need to kind of shut this game out, get one more score, make sure we're far enough ahead that Ospreys can't fight back.
Yeah, they've definitely come in there. I see Jack Carty's come on, but he's come on at 15, not at 10. That's fascinating. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out with Connacht defending their own 22. We'll talk again on full time. Okay, Danny had to run because he had brought my grandson, his child, to his first match, so he had to run there at the end of the game. So now I've got Rob before he runs off. Rob, that was a bonus point win, but it seems very deflating at the end.
Well, it was...
Sorry, 34-26 final score.
Yeah, I don't know at the end, but definitely, because at least they finished with a good defensive stand and made sure they didn't get 2 bonus points.
Yeah.
And I think the Ospreys were abject for 35 minutes and then much, much better. So maybe we need to acknowledge that as well. It was a very weird performance from the visitors.
Well, I think
that was probably part of it.
Part of it, I think, for me, was the fact that they figured out what we were doing, and then we didn't change.
God, where have we seen that before from a team in green?
Absolutely.
Let's not go there. Yeah, maybe. But I also think their intensity was much better and their focus, and their out half was having a dreadful game, and Walsh comes on was much better.
Yeah.
Their hooker was having a dreadful game,
yeah.
and they changed that and they were much better. So I think, but at the same time, too many times in the last 3-4 years, we've watched Connacht ship 3-4 tries like that in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So it was very familiar. I was just chatting to our friend Pete here, and he was saying that. But it is a bit familiar.
It is, except that they kept it to 2 tries.
And they stopped it there.
And then they scored themselves.
Keelan Prendergast's penalty.
Yeah.
And then subsequent turnover after we didn't flip and find touch.
Yeah.
That was impressive. So I guess, the bottom line is Kyle Ford looks class.
Yeah.
Tom Farrar looks really sharp. I like to look at JJ Hanrahan. The back line, the back three, there's so much talent there. Raw talent. I like Kilgallen getting some runs now because I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Ralston looks really, really good. And we felt that last year before his injury against Newcastle, wasn't it, away, when he was taken out.
Yes,
ridiculously. So I think we have a lot of options in the back line. And then Joe Healy on Co-Coms was saying to me in the first half, most of what was good in the first half was coming from the forwards. As in, it was huge performances from Hurley Langton, from Butler, from Joyce, who deserved his man of the match. The business.
Jack Ainger, I thought, was superb.
Ainger was excellent.
Yeah.
Great shout. So, and Dylan Tierney-Martin was very good. So I think there's, positive overall. 5 points. What's your stat? We only won 1 from 6 on the opening day.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's the first time we've ever beaten Ospreys with Justin Chiperick starting at 7. So there you go. There you go. Another little stat.
And he still was very good.
And he was
the 34-year-old.
The offload he gave here in front of us was just
the ooze.
Phenomenal.
It was a weird game. There was no real atmosphere. I'm on the Clan Terrace for the first time in years doing a commentary there. And I thought it was going to be way too noisy, but it was kind of... what could you get excited about, really?
It was about as much atmosphere as it was in the Stade de France last night, to be honest. With no atmosphere. I think 3 o'clock afternoon, first game of the season, fans weren't sure what to do. Connacht took a big, huge lead, which took the edge off the game. Then they went back, and then Connacht fans are going, what the hell's going on?
But it's an opening after a long break since their last actual competitive, or any game against Munster. So, in a scrappy start, if you can take 5 points...
Absolutely.
And then, if you could sneak a good solid win against Glasgow, get to 9...
Yeah.
And then you got that kind of must-win fixture against Ulster because they've taken us here a few times. We took them up on Ravenhill.
Yeah.
There's huge opportunity, so we can be positive. But I think there's evidence there to suggest that it could go the other way.
Yes.
And there could be a couple of defeats coming if they don't tighten up. So I think they're going to be analysing that. William's in there talking to Pete Wilkins. He'll be just delighted to get up and running. But I don't think it's deflating at the end. I think it's kind of more... It's more positive at the end.
Isn't it a nice way to feel? We're sitting here, we're not exactly jumping through hoops because Connacht have won a bonus point try. We're complaining because Connacht only won with a bonus point try and let in a try bonus against themselves. So great to have that situation where great win, 5 points, lots to do.
One more contribution from me. You've dropped one of those small little earbuds that you have on earphones there. It's kind of giving me anxiety because I always lose mine. I'm like, don't lose it. And I think that's the most important contribution I can add to this podcast. So that's me out.
And as you heard at the end, Danny had disappeared and Rob wrapped up the match from his point of view before he had to rush off after commentating for Galway Bay. And here's the post-match interviews. We hear from Toby Flood, Keelan Giles from the Ospreys point of view, and also Pete Wilkins and captain for the day, Caolin Blade.
Toby, when we spoke on Thursday, it struck me that you were very realistic about what you were expecting. And I suppose just before half-time, it looked really bad for the Ospreys. But the second half performance, was that you said you wanted reactions when things happened, and that was a reaction.
Yeah, adversity is part of, growing and life and not just rugby, right? And we've been Welsh rugby, the Ospreys. We've been through our fair share, and I'm just, whether you call it realistic, I think I'm just honest about it. If I'm honest, there's two honest in that. But we want to be a group that sticks tightly together, understands that it's not going to be straightforward. We'll find a way, the best way we can, whether that's how we train, be specific, try and maintain a high self-belief and mood state in the group, because all we've got is each other to help each other. And that's been tested over the last 12 months, and I can only commend the players on how we've got to the start of this season with what they've done and how they've done it, the mindset, the stuff we've done to have fun, to enjoy ourselves, to repair the mentality of the squad. And I think that was the reason that you saw the reaction you did at half-time. I know that was a fairly long-winded answer, but it's important that people understand the context of what these guys have been through. And, yeah, we got punched on the nose in the first half, for sure. And there's a lot for us to improve on. But the good thing is, if we're not committed and you don't see what you see in the second half, then it's a very long journey from there. But the fact that these guys have said, right, rolled up their sleeves, showed a bit of resilience and an application and appetite for improvement, whether it be in the game and week by week, we're going to need all of that in order for us to be the best versions of ourselves, individually and collectively, and that's the aim.
Did Connacht do anything today that really surprised you, or was that it was a bit of an in-and-out performance by them, first game of the season, but in the first half in particular, but were you expecting something in the way they played?
Do you think they're going
No, I think we expected them to be physical, and that's what I come out and done. I think, like Boothie's just said now, I think we turned it around and we had a reaction that second half and we fronted up a bit. But yeah, I think we knew they were going to come with a physical pack, and we just knew that we had to stand in front of them and take it toe-to-toe.
Pete, first game over. Pretty much a game of two halves in some ways. Connacht were cruising 27-5, and then the Ospreys switched on. And second half might stand to you in some ways with the amount of effort that went on, but what's the mood downstairs?
Yeah, look, I think overall everyone's delighted to get a win, and I think to get a bonus point win at home in front of our fans. I thought we played some really good rugby in that first half, and probably looked some good examples of what sort of team we want to be this year. So I think that's really important. That gives us momentum, full stop. I think that second half, the Ospreys came out with great intensity, great energy. I think on the back of that came great physicality, and it forced us into some errors. It forced us into some ill discipline, and in the end, it brought the scoreline closer together. So. Yeah, a little bit disappointed with that second half. I think we'll look really closely at why that was, and I think huge credit has to go at the Ospreys for the way they turned around after half time. But also look at what could we have controlled in terms of, was it our running game, our kicking game? Was it just in terms of a bit of quicker organisation? That's something we'll look into, but hugely important to get a win first up.
Yeah, it was a good fast start, and obviously there was some slick plays. I mean, the centre partnership were running amok a couple of times. Really good, solid decision-making and passing. And I thought Joe Joyce, Jack Ainger, they laid down a bit of a marker, particularly Joe Joyce, a couple of hard tackles. So what was the mood at half-time? What were you thinking how the second half would go? Do you see it ahead, or are you just thinking, well, we'll see how it goes?
No, it's a really good question. I think for us, you generally go in at half-time when there's a scoreline like that, and you expect the opposition to come out stronger, and you expect them to respond, and they'll have gathered some thoughts and probably got a huge amount of motivation from Toby and his staff as well. So it's not that bit of it's unseen. I think it's a balance, because on the one hand your focus is very much on staying on process, and I know that can be a really boring statement to make, but it's not to get carried away. It's to stay on track with the things that were working well in the first half and doing the simple things really well. But at the same time, when the opposition are going to come out and probably with a greater intensity, you've got to find a way of going up a gear as well. So it's it's a good problem to have. You'd rather go in at half time with a decent lead, but at the same time I just think we probably kept trucking, and the Ospreys came out at a higher level. So I was pleased that we contained that, and albeit we shipped a bit of water in terms of them getting their tries, but ultimately we managed to see it out, and I think that's another important lesson for us.
Yeah, I alluded to at the start there. Is there a gain from having to work that hard in defence rather than maybe just running away and doubling your score, that you'll have learned from that, even though there are fixes required? Because in a tighter game, the sort of upping of the pace by the opposition could be quite tricky. They could get a lot closer to you.
Yeah, look, I think it's a good position to be in, especially after round one, where you can celebrate a decent win and you can celebrate some really good individual performances and some really positive moments in the game where you're saying, look, this is the sort of team we want to be this season, or at least this is a good example of us on the way to being that. But at the same time, you're coming out of it saying, we can work on certain things and we can get better. And, that's where it's crucial. I've just said the very thing to the lads in the change room there. Let's celebrate the win and let's acknowledge that we've got off to a decent start. But at the same time, we've got to dig in particularly to that second half and say, what could we have controlled and what could we have done better? Because, we'll have to be better next week against Glasgow in the sense that it will be a different type of challenge, no disparagement on the Ospreys. I just think that it'll be a really different kind of challenge in terms of how the Glasgow attack and they'll want their share of possession and we'll need to be better in order to handle that. So I think there'll be some great lessons out of that second half for us. The key thing for us, I said it in advance of the game, you always have to be unbelievably physical to be in the fight against an Osprey side. And as I said, I thought we did a good job of that first half, along with that urgency, and they came out and they fired their own shot. So credit to them.
Just as well, look at it. There was 6 debutants, 3 started. JJ Hanrahan had a very competent start, 6 out of 6 off the tee, looked well settled. I will say, you couldn't get a better day to kick at the sports ground. This is the one benign day of the season, probably. But he was good, and that creates. And then Jack, unfortunately, how is his injury, by the way? He got a nasty old cut there.
Yeah, Jack got a nasty laceration to the jaw there. It was an accidental boot just when he came out the back end of the tackle. And, he'll need some stitches, so he's gone off to hospital to get that seen to. But they'll patch him up. And he was in decent spirits considering, but he'll need a bit of work done on the face there, so he'll go off and get that. JJ was excellent. It's exactly the player that we knew we were recruiting, and it was the player that we've seen so far in pre-season. So I was delighted for him, and I think especially in front of our home fans to get off to that kind of start for him personally and make that sort of statement. And we're in the position there we're able to bring Jack off the bench, and it won't always be that way round, I'm sure. But disappointed for Jack they didn't get that full 20 minutes to really show what he's got as well. And it would have been pretty exciting seeing the pair of them out there and trying to pull the strings sort of from a running game, but also a kicking game perspective.
Potentially JJ could be a fullback if needed.
Look, we know he can cover there, and certainly through his career, Munster and Dragons and Claremont, he's had time, obviously his time at 10, but he's had time at 12 and fullback as well. So it's an option for us. We've got a fair bit of utility around those back 3 players, which is great. But you see today that there'll be times when you need guys to shuffle. So his value there will be really important.
And the final one from me. You're always looking for players, early in the season, but Cathal Ford seems to have kicked on again.
He was terrific, Fordy. I think he's got better and better through pre-season, and he's come good at the right time. And I was delighted for him tonight because he really asserted himself on the opposition. And I think Cahill's someone who does the basics really, really well in defence in terms of watching the ball and being accurate around his decision making in defence. He's someone who's strong on the ball in attack and quality catch pass, and he can kick with that nice left foot. So there's a lot about him that can put him in that bracket of being a good solid glue in the team, and some of the time that can not seem as a compliment, but for him to have that all-round competency is massive for us. And then you get days like today when he's beating defenders and getting out the back end of tackles and getting offloads and line breaks for himself. So we've got enormous excitement about what sort of player he can become over the course of the season and obviously in the seasons to come. But for him to start so positively, knowing we've got some pretty good 12s in the wings as well who'll be jumping at the bit for an opportunity as well. So really pleased for him, and he's a key part of what we did well, particularly in the first half.
Okay.
looking at the next week, the guys who weren't quite right, like Connor and John Porch, are they in any way likely to be available for next week?
They're possibles. Like a lot of those guys we're missing at the moment, they're in that kind of, or they were in that sort of 2 to 3 week bracket, and a lot of the time it's just seeing how their training load goes across the week. So, yeah, we'll see if they can come back in. Connor's probably the more likely of those guys, but we'll assess them on Monday.
And then you have a situation where you have a team that's had a 4-try victory, there were goods, there were bads, but given it's 11 weeks, how do you balance the temptation to stay with a winning 15 as much as you can, injuries allowing, and then rotating both to give players a chance to get match fitness, but also to prevent sort of like just natural wear and tear, just wearing players down. So 6-7 weeks down the line, suddenly you have to make a load of changes.
No, it's something for us to be really cognizant of. I think there's a bit of a natural rhythm to these first probably 7 games, in the sense we've got the 3 home games. You're probably looking at who's played well and rewarding those guys' with performance. Edinburgh away is a different type of game. I think you need to pick a certain type of team and certain style of game plan to do well away in Edinburgh, certainly from previous experience. So, there's a good opportunity to mix things up there. And then we've got the South African trip, which, in itself, we're probably, you're taking maybe 28, 29 players over there. So you're working with what you've got once you're over there and return for a really short turnaround against Leinster. So in that sense, I think, we'll look carefully at who's playing well in these first 3 games, and then there'll be a bit of natural rotation as we get to some of those away blocks as well.
And finally, Andrew came in from the Sevens. Not really a position, fullback's not really a position in Sevens. It's certainly not in the way it is in 15s. We'd seen him on the wing and he looked absolutely exciting and was someone the fans were looking forward to see. But 15, was that his call? Was that your call? Was it just circumstances that dictated that you needed someone to play a fullback? Or what was the reasoning behind putting Andrew?
Yeah, it was very much my call. I mean, we do have a couple of decent 15s who are out at the moment, and with Santiago and Porchy, who's very capable there. Mac obviously can play there, not yet back from his break after the Ireland duty. Tiernan's on the return to fitness. He'll be ready in the next week or so. So, yeah, in terms of other options around there, I felt that Andrew was probably best fit, and a lot of that is what we've seen from him in pre-season in terms of the things he's shown that he's really really good at on the wing, in terms of his communication, his catching of high balls. He's got a kicking game. Obviously, has a magnificent running game. So all of those bits gave us confidence he could do it in terms of skill set. It's then looking at what type of game do we expect from the Ospreys, and what we expected was to get a fair amount of ball kicked at us and an opportunity to run it back around about that sort of 40, 50 metre line. So I think looking at what the opposition might give us as access points to the game, that's really important. Against a Glasgow or against an Ulster, you might think differently. But I thought he did really well for a first run there today, and it's a little bit unfamiliar. I thought he did a great job, and we know his qualities on the wing anyway, but if he can provide us an option in certain games, then that's brilliant at fullback as well.
Are there any negatives in what you perceive as negatives that really need fixing?
In terms of the team performance, look, I think we need to dig into that ability to go up a gear in the second half. I think that's important for us, and so there's an element that Ospreys were always going to go up a gear after being probably disappointed with that first half and having some pretty strong words at half time. But it's how we respond to that, and it's probably there's an emotional response to that in terms of making sure that we bring the required energy, but there's also a rugby response to that in terms of, is it our running game, is it our kicking game, do we go to our kick chase, do we grind it out the set piece? That'll be the really interesting bit to try and pull apart and say, well, what's actually in our control in terms of giving us that extra gear second half, because I know we've got it, but it's just making sure we're all aligned in terms of that plan on it.
Yeah. Just one for me, Joe Joyson steered himself to the crowd the way he was hitting out there and managed to win man of the match, even though the hat-trick try scorer sitting beside you. I'm not sure how he managed to do that. From a technical point of view, did he do what you wanted him to do, or what you were expecting?
Yeah, I think now that Joe's had this period, this is where there are some real positives to the long pre-season that we've had. Joe's had that period to condition himself physically to the stage where he can really contribute in terms of the tempo that we want to play the game at. He's also in a position to learn our systems and build some of those relationships and connections with the guys around him, and actually build up some match fitness. And I think for Joe, particularly over the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks, once we've been in these pre-season games, he's got better with every opportunity. And I think today we saw some examples of the real qualities we saw when we were looking at him when he was still playing for Bristol, and that he can bring that enormous physicality and presence to a forward pack or a defence. But he also has a soft touch on the ball, and if he needs to link play and help other guys find space, he's got that ability to do it as well. So I'm delighted for him. I think it would have meant a lot to him to get off to such a good start in front of his new sort of home supporters. I think that's massive, and so I think he'll continue to get better and better, and probably then on the back of that we'll start to see his leadership around the group as well, which is an enormous part of his his qualities. So delighted for Joe, and we'll watch him as we go.
Keelan, 3 tries, a Connacht win, captain today. So yeah, pretty good day to start the new season. Long season. It's been a long wait for it, but it's up and running now.
Yeah, look, delighted. Obviously, there's bits that we're going to look back on Monday, and we'll pick them apart. But I think, for the most part, absolutely delighted. We had a good few debutants today. With Tom Farrell with his 100th cap. Very good crowd here. So yeah, look, delighted with the start. We'll go again next week.
Yeah, it's 3 home games, so it's a different challenge to last year when it was 3 away games. But now there is a pressure on to win these games to sort of get your season off to a really solid beginning. So next week will probably take care of itself. What do you think you'll look back from the second half? Was there a slightly slow reaction to them upping a gear, or was the concentration for the first game of the season maybe slightly off?
It's hard to say now. We had 1 or 2 unforced errors. I suppose you go in, I think it was 27-5. Did we expect it to just happen again? Maybe. Something we'll look back on and we'll definitely learn from. I'm kind of happy that there were things that weren't good, or I'm happy it wasn't perfect, because you can work hard next week. Yeah, we look back. There was a little bit of a wind. I'm not saying the conditions were very good for the sports ground. That could have had a little bit of a factor. I think the Ospreys played a little bit differently in the second half, and they maybe caught us off guard for the first 10 minutes. But yeah, we'll look back at that. But
yeah, I said it to Pete before you came in there that maybe in some ways you will gain from the second half, having to put in, if you say you doubled the score and you'd won 57 or 54-15 or something, you wouldn't have had the defensive effort, but actually you had to reorganise and really dig in. That might stand to you in a game like next week or when Ulster come down here. There's always a potential to learn from in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think the ball was in play quite a lot as well. We'll look back at the numbers in the GPS and see are we fit or do we need to work harder. But yeah, there's I suppose as a 9, I'll speak with JJ, Jack, Colin Riley. We'll sit down on Monday and we'll pick it apart like we always do. Whether you win or lose, that's what you do. So we'll get the learnings on Monday, and Tuesday we'll put it to bed, and we'll go again for next week.
JJ outside you today. I don't know how many out half partners you've had. We'll get our stato man here to have that one for next week. How did you find linking with him?
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I think JJ, he's been amazing since he's come in here. He's extremely experienced. He's been in a good few places, which is so good, because I've been in Connacht all my life. I do things the way we do it here, so it's just picking his brain off the field. But yeah, he's a really good 10. Extremely vocal. He demands exactly what I want. Someone outside me who demands what he wants, and I do my best to do that for him. But yeah, I suppose he brought a little bit of a different dynamic to the 10s that we've probably previously had. So yeah, he's a really good attacker. He's a really good place kicker, as you've seen today. And then look, you have Jack coming on, who's international out half. So I think we're pretty happy where we are there.
And Cahill forward at 12, so there was a nice linkage there. He was creating really well today, as well as defending.
Oh, 100%. I thought he was outstanding. He's been outstanding for a while. He's still only pretty young, but he's a big man. So yeah, I think he's only going to get better. With confidence he's going to get from today as well. But the way he created today was a bit from him, but it was from the lads around him as well. I thought Tom Farrell was exceptional as well, and with JJ, I think had our attack moving very well in the first half. Forwards really fronted up, so you can see what we can do, but we just probably need to do it for 70-75 minutes instead of probably 50.
Well, it's never less than interesting watching, so it gives us something to talk about. Look forward to next week, and we'll catch up again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
You suggested that all the years that you have been here, is there anything particularly specific this season that's different that you feel, you're going somewhere different on this journey?
100%. I think when you've new coaching staff, it freshens players. Everyone wants to make an impression, but they have different, I wouldn't say different styles, but they just have different ways of looking at stuff. I've been lucky enough to have amazing coaches here, and I've developed along, but it's the same as other younger lads coming up. Now they can, like, I think Mark Sexton, Scott Fardy, like, he's been in so many different places. So, like, they've been there, done that. And that's kind of a role model for us, kind of a leadership that we look up to, and I think they've been amazing. And then obviously John Muldoon, who's a legend here. I think the forwards have got such a lift from him coming back. So yeah, it's early days. We'll see how we're going, but I suppose the start of every season you always have that feeling that things are going, but actually I feel there's a tiny bit of a different feeling this season. I think it's just with the players we have, the squad depth we have, and the coaching staff. Yeah.
There's one for me. You're the first person to score 3 hat-tricks in 1 year. You scored them all this year.
Yeah.
Henry and Martin now, but it also means you've jumped into 3rd place in the all-time list above John Carr and a certain Kieran Marmion. Does that make you happy?
It does. Look, I suppose Marmo, when he was here, I remember first coming into the sports ground and looking at him, and I remember thinking to myself, how am I gonna even compete with that lad? So I think Marmo probably doesn't know how much of an effect he had on my career. I just had to get better. I won't say I had to get as good as him, because I don't think I ever will be. But yeah, look, I'm delighted to score tries, but 3 tries tonight were off the back of extremely good team play. I'll take the applause for going over the line, but they're just extremely good play from the whole team, and I think that's the exciting part.
Okay, we're in the press room afterwards. I've got Linley MacKenzie. Hi, Linley. How do you think that went?
Evening. Well, we can all be very happy, can't we?
We certainly can. We certainly can. And Dave Finn, you were announcing for officially the first time today, I think it was it? Doing a good job too.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very different perspective from where we are, because I've come to a rugby ground to watch a match off of television, which is just very strange. And also I had RefLink, and by the standards of a RefLink game, that was very quiet. It was a very quiet game. I was impressed by the intervention of the lines of the touch judges. I have no idea what the fourth official was intervening on, because it was entirely in Italian, and my Italian is virtually non-existent. But I thought, in terms of it was in terms of that perspective, it was an interesting game. In terms of the performance, it was a sloppy second half, but maybe they did think it was a bit too easy in the first half, and they got into their heads and they got not complacent, but they just took their eye off the ball. And to be fair, this is an Ospreys team which in the first game is already fighting for pride, and their professional pride, their pride in their jersey came out in the second half, but they just weren't quite good enough. No, they weren't. Linley, your thoughts? It was the end of the first half. Letting Ospreys score right on half time was like an irritant, because other than that, it'd been an excellent first half. And then Connacht just didn't come out in the second half, did they?
Well, there was always going to be a response from the Ospreys. I mean, maintaining the way they played the first half and the second half, when there's always going to be a response. And if the boot was on the other foot, you would expect Connacht to come out in that second half and do exactly what the Ospreys did. So they knew what was coming. It doesn't detract from how good that first half was, because I actually thought it was probably one of the best first halves of rugby I've seen from Connacht in a long time.
Well, certainly for the first game of the season.
For the first game of the season, everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going, what they were doing, who was going to be in support, and I thought it was actually a superb game, opening half of rugby to watch. Second half, obviously, had to be more of a defensive second half, and yes, they conceded. Excuse me, they conceded tries there. But at the end of the day, look, it came to there was a little bit of a squeaky bum time. There was a period there, you know, where there was. But I don't think they ever really looked like they weren't.
Yeah.
They weren't going to win it. I think they had enough in them. And remember, they did bring on a lot of the subs as well in the second half to give them, you know, some game time. So I think all in all, I think it was a really strong performance. And it just goes to show that if they can produce that in the first half, you know,
be able to do it again.
And with the subs that came on, I mean, you know, it looks like a very solid squad. And obviously, you know, I'm not sure if every team's like it. I know obviously Toby Booth has his own struggles with the Ospreys at the moment, but if you can produce that in the first half and with the squad that we have, I think this season, I think you could have produced it. They're going to be bigger challenges than the Ospreys. So let's just say it was a good opening match. They scored this number of tries. Everyone basically got an opportunity of the squad that was on the pitch, got an opportunity to show off, to, you know, perform. And, you know, all in all, I think, you know, they should go away very happy tonight.
They should indeed. Anyone in particular, like Joe Joyce, and as you might have heard earlier in the podcast, I was looking forward to Joe Joyce, and he certainly made a good impression.
Oh, he made an incredible impression on Max Nagy. Wow, what a tackle! It's the lock is not a sexy position. It's the big lad or the tall lad, and the tall lad can do things like what Niall Murray does, and just stick his hands up and just Tom Ahern down as much as they. They just basically are giraffes with brilliant hands. But what Joe Joyce is that other type of lock who does the gnarly, nasty, pushing guys off rocks, pushing guys in through mauls, disrupting mauls, making the big hits in the middle. If Joe Joyce ever runs in from 50 yards, I think this place will collapse from shock. He's not that type of lock, but he does the jobs that have to be done. And then he puts in a tackle like the one he put on Naj, and it lit the crowd up because he's an old... I'm not saying he's a throwback to a different age where all your locks had to do was hit people hard. Now, he's got more than that. He clearly has more than that because he's a professional rugby player. But that fundamentally, if you nail it down to what is his core attribute, that's what it is. And we've needed that. Because our locks are brilliant in the line-out. They're brilliant around the pitch. But when it comes to that nasty, like, nuggety work, they're just not built that way. They're all kind of a bit Devon Toner-esque. Yes. And he's bring something different to the ballpark. And he encouraged the other guys, because suddenly a lot of the tackles in that first half, like I say, his was the most outstanding, but there was an awful lot.
Yeah, Jack Ainger was smashing people as well.
And Jack's another guy who, he went through that mad try-scoring phase at the start of last season, but Jack's another guy who's a bit more of a traditional style of what his position should be, but he was doing stuff off the ball as well. And we know that Joe set up Keelan for one of his tries. But, the pack as a unit were excellent. I don't think, Joe stood out, but I don't think there was anybody else was lower or higher. I think it was a united effort. And I think Joe gets man of the match as a reward for the fact that the pack dominated in the first half. I would point out, and I meant to say it to Keelan, the first time that the watch was stopped in the first half was on 39 minutes and 17 seconds. Those boys put in. There was a lot of running around in that first half.
There was, Linley, was there? There was one stage. I think it was in the second half. I picked up the mic to do the 60-minute bit with Danny. I think I picked it up on 59:20 and said, right, we'll be ready for this. And we got to talk on 62:40 or something. So there was an awful lot of rugby. And one stage we were missing the scrum half, and JJ ran in to be scrum half, and he's shouting at the forwards, come in. And they're looking at him going, just kick it out. You know, because there was an awful lot of ball and play time.
There was, and I think when you're talking about Joe Joyce, I think what he has is you can't not see him on the pitch.
Yes.
He's ever present. He has a huge presence. And I think that possibly we haven't had, as you know, as Dave says, we haven't had that sort of presence possibly in the pack for a while. Probably maybe not since the John Muldoon era in some ways. Yep. There's probably been more people, but when I look back, you know, those people who make a presence, and they're always there and they're involved in everything. And I think he particularly stood out. I think possibly It must be the Connemara blood in him, I'm presuming.
Absolutely, Linley, absolutely. And JJ, as yes, there was a little bit of a breeze blowing today, but 6 out of 6 is a nice way for JJ to start. And seem to be a nice calming influence out there.
Yeah, I think it's actually, just talking to Pete Wilkins there about JJ. It's probably the first time in a long time that we've actually had, I think, a couple of out halves who can interchange, and I think that Jack Carty has taken a huge load in the last 6, 8, how many years that he's been here. He's like ever present, and I think I think that's probably taken a lot of the shine and maybe taken a little bit of a toll on him, but he has always had to be in that position and he's had a huge responsibility there. And I think what you might get to see now is a Jack with a lighter load, and he might come into that game, possibly he might shine more than he has before. But I think it's great that now you have 2 out halves who can slot into that position, and JJ Hanrahan's obviously, he's a very experienced player.
He is.
And I think that's exactly what Connacht needed.
Yeah, I think that was the perfect start to the season for us, and we're been firing out our podcast all this week, so we're going to keep this one nice and short. I think we're quite happy. Anything you want to add at the very end there, Dave? Any other business? Or
the only thing I'll mention is these first few rounds, there is a case to be said there's actually been too much rugby scheduled for this time of year. I mean, we've got our own games. The Premiership in the UK started last week. Top 14 has been going on for how long? There's a small matter of the Rugby World Cup semi-final we have. Because of something else I completely missed last night. Looks like I missed a not a particularly good game of rugby. Even though it was a good All Blacks performance. But we've also got the WXV is on at the moment, and that's got lost. That has got completely lost.
Another good win for Ireland.
But yeah, I think possibly there was a little bit of a scheduling crisis in terms of why there's way too much rugby being on. But hey, better lots of rugby than no rugby. I mean, there's going to be periods when I hate the summer, especially because Monday through Friday, there's no team sports, and quite frankly, after a while, GAA can get a bit boring.
Okay, Linley, we'll finish up. Do you have anything you want to finish off the podcast with today?
Maybe just to wish the All Blacks all the best of luck in what is going to be a really, really, really tough final.
One way or the other, because we don't know who's won it. As we record this, we're still before the semi-final, but we're assuming the South Africans are going to beat England. But hopefully it'll be a much better game than the game I gave up on after 20 minutes last night. I did. It was over. The game was over. It was obvious that New Zealand were going to run away with it. It wasn't competitive.
Can I point out that wasn't the All Blacks' fault?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't blaming the All Blacks. No, I wasn't. I was just saying I like competitive rugby.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting because if it is, and everyone is assuming that it's going to be South Africa, you are going to have pretty much 2 different types of team playing on that pitch.
Best of luck to the All Blacks, as I'll call them for once. All right, we'll leave it there, folks.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Sad and confused.